They left for California with wagons and hope. By the time they were found, some had eaten the dead to stay alive. The Donner Party wasn't the first to die on the trail, but their story became a legend of desperation, isolation, and horror in the snow. The westward journey was supposed to bring new beginnings. In the spring of 1846, a group of nearly 90 settlers set out from Springfield, Illinois, headed for California. Among them were George Donner, his brother Jacob, and James Reed, ordinary families with extraordinary ambition. They followed the Oregon Trail like thousands of others before them. But at Fort Bridger in Wyoming, the group split. A guidebook promised a shortcut, the Hastings Cutoff, which would supposedly save them hundreds of miles. It had never been tested by large wagon parties, but the author swore by it. They took the risk. What followed was not a shortcut, but a death sentence. The cutoff led them through the rugged Wasatch Mountains and across the Great Salt Lake Desert. The terrain was savage: cliffs, salt flats, searing heat. The desert crossing, expected to take a few days, stretched into 2 agonizing weeks. Dozens of oxen died. Wagons broke down. Morale cracked. By the time they reached Nevada, they were dangerously behind schedule, exhausted, and low on food. Then came the final barrier, the Sierra Nevada. They reached the base of the mountains near Truckee Lake, now Donner Lake, in late October. Just one more push, and they'd be in California. But winter came early that year. On October 28th, a snowstorm buried the mountain pass. They were trapped. The party built cabins and lean-tos from logs and wagon parts. They slaughtered the last of their livestock, rationed flour, and boiled animal hides into gluey broth. Some chewed on tree bark. Snow piled higher and higher, sealing them in. In mid-December, 15 members formed a rescue group, the Forlorn Hope. They strapped crude snowshoes to their feet and set out to cross the mountains. Starving and delirious, they lost their way. One by one, they collapsed. And then, when no other option remained, they resorted to cannibalism. The survivors of the Forlorn Hope staggered into a settlement weeks later. Their story triggered a series of rescue missions, but snow and distance slowed everything. It wasn't until February 1847 that the first rescue team reached the lake. What they found was a frozen hellscape. Children wrapped in rags, mothers weeping over dead bodies, bones stripped of flesh. They were taken in shifts, those strong enough to walk first. The weak, the dying, had to wait for the next rescue team. Some waited too long. In all, 4 relief parties made the brutal journey over the mountains between February and April. Rescuers had to leave supplies buried in snowdrifts and return multiple times. At one point, a survivor, Tamsin Donner, refused to leave her dying husband behind. She died beside him. James Reed, who had earlier been banished from the group for killing a man in self-defense, now returned as a hero, leading one of the relief teams that saved the remaining children, including his own. Of the original 87 emigrants who were trapped, only 48 survived. Nearly half had perished from starvation, exposure, or illness. Many of the survivors were children. The Donner Party became instant infamy. Newspapers called it a tale of madness and cannibalism. Preachers condemned them as sinners. But the real story was more complicated. It was about human limits, about trust placed in the wrong guidebook, about ambition, weather, and desperation. The story did not fade. In the years that followed, survivors were interviewed, studied, and mythologized. Some tried to forget. Others, like Virginia Reed, just 12 years old when she survived, went on to write about the ordeal, urging future emigrants not to take shortcuts. Today, Donner Pass remains a haunting place. Snow still falls heavy there in winter. A monument stands above the lake, its base built 22 feet high. The depth of that winter's snow. Beneath it lies the memory of what happened and what people will do to live. The story of the Donner Party endures not just because of what they did, but because of what they represent. The brutal gamble of the American frontier and the thin line between civilization and survival. Thank you for listening to Deserted Trails. If this story moved you, consider joining us again as we uncover more forgotten truths from the American frontier.